My top 10 most bizarre and interesting YouTube videos that make us question reality and also what we really know in the world of what there is to know. So here's number 1. The giant UFO near the sun. Now this is actually NASA footage which was released some years ago, around the year of 2012, and what it actually shows is a giant object or almost a life form. This thing does not look like some form of artificial intelligence, although it may be, and you can actually see where the CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, are being monitored, and this thing has a tail which is almost tethered to the actual energy of the sun. Now we know the sun as basically being gas and nuclear fission, but in reality it's very possible that the sun might be something that we don't yet fully comprehend. But this thing itself has this long tether and tentacles which are attaching or harnessing energy from the sun. Now it's actually taken energy from the sun, and because it's almost like a spherical object itself, it's absorbing that energy, it's refueling that energy into itself and then actually flying away from the sun. Now one of the possible theories for this could be that when UFOs were sighted as far back as the First and Second World War and also Vietnam, one of the things that they would often discover, and this was when they looked at the actual radio pictures of lightning showing the weather, that whenever there was a thunderstorm or a lightning storm, discs or UFOs would actually come around the electrical storm to harness the actual energy from the electrical storm. But this object itself is actually taking the energy from the sun. It's making physical contact, which we would consider to be impossible considering how hot the actual surface of the sun is and what the actual sun is itself as the star, and it's shooting away at phenomenal speed. The only thing that I can actually think of is that this energy is being used in some form to actually to charge a form of artificial intelligence. Now there's something called Leonid, which is low Earth orbit nano interstellar device, which basically is a form of self-replicating artificial intelligence which can orbit very close to the Earth. It comes within the atmosphere. But this video is very interesting. Video number 2. A human-like creature has been found whilst digging the earth next to a place called Jodhpur in India, close to Rajasthan. Now my nana actually told me a very similar story when I was a child, that they were digging the surface of the ground for a water well, and a small creature came out, breathed the air and actually died. This creature itself has 4 fingers and an alien-like head. Now scientifically, the scientific community, as far as I'm aware, has looked at this, has analysed this. Again, something that's been in great secrecy. These types of things don't make the mainstream news and media, but its head is very alien-like, its features are alien-like, and the fact that it has 4 fingers indicates that it's a form of extraterrestrial life that lives within the actual earth. Now other creatures like this have been found. This one here looks very similar to some actual idols that have been in ancient history, idols that look very similar. And also, as I've mentioned before in my other videos, the blue beings that have been seen coming out from under the earth in India. So this is something that's very interesting, and probably in the scientific world it's also interested a lot of people there as well. So again, another fascinating video. Video number 3. The UFO that punches a hole through the cloud. Now this was in America, and it was quite close to a nearby airport. It's not the best UFO footage that there is on YouTube. Some of them are real, some of them are fake, but this is one that fascinated me simply because of the sheer speed of the object, that it would be very difficult to fake. You can actually see it punch through the cloud, and the object is traveling at such a high speed that it actually skips frames when they've even slowed the footage down. It's not in all of the frames, so this footage is definitely showing a UFO aircraft that's not from this world. There are lots of sightings of UFOs that are actually man-made, especially the triangle objects. This is what they've been reverse engineering for, the last 50, 60, 70 years, and Bob Lazar was heavily involved in that. But this footage itself is fascinating because it's simply showing the sheer speed of the object going through the cloud. Video number 4, the real werewolf footage that was shot in Germany in 1942. Now, the actual video is part of a documentary, and it shows some soldiers actually going through looking for something in the woods. And within this actual field of knowledge, there's this whole thing with soldiers and werewolves, and there's even been some testimony from some whistleblower soldiers that indicate how the DNA was mixed. So soldiers would have extrasensory perception, a heightened sense of awareness, even things like, the actual sense of not having any fear. If you look at the movie The Jackal, it indicates that they were mixing the DNA of jackals, wolves, dogs with man to actually get the best potential soldier that they could, and it's always around the whole idea of soldiers. We'll see this with Wolverine as well in the X-Men, that in fact he was an actual soldier. So it's very interesting, that whole area. There's been testimony that these beings themselves, upon some of the rituals that are carried out in the higher ranks or the higher ranks of the actual military, these beings materialize from other dimensions, and in fact they have been used in certain operations in certain black projects. But werewolves are something that have fascinated me for a long time, and I think this footage itself looks very real. It doesn't actually look like fake footage. There's lots of fake footage out there, but I thought I would add this because it's a very interesting video. Video number 5, the famous cow abduction. Now, this video itself fascinates me. I've seen it some years ago. The video itself looks like it's potentially from the 90s. That's been filmed somewhere, and you see the cows in the field, and this cow just literally going up, and there's almost like a flash, which is a spherical object, a cylindrical object, typical UFO cloud formation. When you've seen the UFO footage and the UFO pictures that show how they use cloak technology, where they actually use clouds to cloak themselves. A bit of anecdotal information on this video, and this is something that I've heard in circles for abductees. Now, there's been the whole thing in the past with the cattle mutilation, and even though some of it has been branded that it's methane gas that builds up inside the cow, and then it actually explodes, and there's very accurate tears and things like that happen on the stomach. It doesn't explain how tongues are surgically removed and eyes are surgically removed and all of the internal organs, and there's no sign of bleeding or attack or anything. But I actually have quite a profound theory on that area. There's been the whole thing behind Serpo, that these extraterrestrial beings actually take humans from this planet, take women that are pregnant and also sperm and eggs, and actually build hybrids, so they have hybrid aliens and humans, and they take them back to their planet. And it's an ongoing experimentational process where they actually try to see how these hybrid beings adapt in their world and in their environment, because one of the things that is trying to happen is an actual the terraforming on this planet is the integration of the grey aliens to actually coexist with humans in the future. And they actually needed the milk, because even though they actually made hybrid aliens, those babies were actually still wanting to feed off milk the way us humans grow and develop using milk. So one of the reasons for the vast huge amount of cow abductions and that took place was simply for them to genetically engineer, or simply have, I mean, just imagine this, a vision of a UFO and inside that is a cow, and they're basically using the cow for the milk, and there's like tanks, you know, with all of these hybrid aliens babies in there, and they're feeding from this milk, and almost like in a very hospitalized environment, a surgical environment. They actually done that so they could genetically modify and genetically use a cow to potentially even create cows themselves for their own planet, so they could build entire populations of human hybrid alien species back on their own planet. And that's my actual theory, is that it's all to do with the milk, and how if they have thousands of hybrid aliens on their planet, the only way that they can monitor and analyze things is to actually allow that child to grow and develop. And this is the whole thing behind all of the testimony of the cases of abductions, when they actually take the abductee back and say, look, these are your offspring, these are actually the hybrid human and aliens. They've grown older now, and you see pictures of aliens that have been drawn that look like greys, and then they have hair, human hair. So their biological vessel is a human body, but they also have the features of grey aliens. So that's a fascinating video again. Video number 6. Giants in Peru. Now the video is actually titled Giant Aliens Caught on Tape in Peru, but I actually think that they're not giant aliens, but giant humanoids, or giant humans that actually live on the earth. There's been several cases of giants that we've seen, and in fact there are very human-like giants that actually live on the planet that are 7 or 8 feet tall. But these creatures here seem to be in excess of 10, 11, 12 feet tall, perhaps even, you know, close to 15, 20 feet tall. If we look at the actual trees, these giants are very animated. This is not CGI. These things are huge, and they actually appear to be standing on the actual hill. Again, fascinating footage, and you've seen the actual remains of the giants that I've included before. There's an interesting story to this, because National Geographic actually covered this up. There was remains found of a giant. It might have been Saudi Arabia or India or Egypt, Middle East, in that type of eastern ground. And it's interesting how obviously all of the religions have come from eastern soil, and all of the mythology that's branded as mythology today has come from eastern soil. We don't think the indigenous people of this planet, or the native people of Earth, don't believe that these things are mythology. We believe it as actual fact. But these beings are obviously came to the Earth because it's the warmest continent, and a lot of species of aliens and higher beings as well, you know, they actually require the sun. They love the heat, they love the sun, and they can't actually operate. These beings are based upon the sun. They can't actually operate without that type of climate and heat. And a part of that is actually within indigenous people as well. But this video itself is fascinating because it shows these beings moving and walking around, and you can actually tell from the very reactions of the people that are filming the video that this is quite legitimate. You know, there's no to me, for somebody who works with video, somebody who has been producing video for over a decade now, with video editing and things like that, and forms of dithering and pixelation, I understand how you can actually tamper with video, but this itself appears to be quite legitimate. And again, it's another extraordinary video. Video number 7. Whilst we're on the subject of giants, I thought it'd be interesting to share another fascinating video which is of a real Japanese giant. Now this footage itself is fascinating. This giant is a good 4 meters, 15 feet, 16 feet high, and it's some form of parade, and the people are surrounding this individual as though he's just a standard human. He almost looks like a sumo wrestler, but in the parade he's walking alongside a horse and actually towers the horse. Now horses themselves are a good 6 or 7 feet tall, and it's the leg height, the actual giant's leg height is the same height as the horse, or it certainly looks that way from the actual perspective of where it's been filmed. Now Japanese people are not as short as Chinese people, but it has a long neck. You can see the neck muscles and you can see the long neck, and in terms of appearance it just looks like a standard human. There is no particular, it's not apparent that he's got some form of issue where he's just freakishly large, because it's a genetic disorder. This actually looks like a very standard human, but just a human that is a giant. Now we know of similar giants in Japan and also similar giants around the world which get to around 8 feet tall, but this thing is a good 15, 16 feet high. And again, it's a very interesting video. Video number 8, The Invisible Soldier. I find this footage extremely interesting. It basically shows a convoy in Iraq, or a mission in Iraq, potentially an operation, a black operation or a secret operation. You see an Iraqi tank come into an area. I mean, the whole thing is hazy, it's not clear what's happening here. It's very covert because you did have a period during the actual Iraq war where US soldiers and the Iraqi soldiers were actually working together in some cases for different intelligence gathering and different intelligence missions. But you'll see potentially Iraqi people here leave, and then a US tank come straight after that, and here in fact you'll see in a second somebody running back to the tank and getting inside of that. When the other tanks pull up from behind, there he goes, getting straight in there before they can see, quite in a stealth-like motion. Bizarre, but again another interesting video. Video number 9, The War of the Worlds in Syria. Now before I show you that, I'll back up a little bit and I'll show you the TR-3B, which is this aircraft here. This was filmed in Paris. It's the triangular shaped object which has been seen as far back as the Phoenix Lights in Arizona, and also the Belgian Wave. But this is man-made. It's zero gravity propulsion. It's based upon pure anti-gravity technology, and that's a field there which indicates that the actual object itself becomes light, which is fascinating, superluminal. But in the video here, you'll see in Syria a very similar triangular shaped object. Not exactly the same object, not the identical craft, but you'll see a very similar looking triangular shaped object blow up an entire set of ruins in Syria. Phenomenal. And it just injects an explosive material, and before it actually blows up the temple or the ruins, you see the actual object fly straight up at breakneck speed. Now, it's fascinating to understand that this is potentially a human mission. These crafts are carrying human soldiers, and for people in Iraq, these crafts have been spotted in Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and there's a fascinating documentary called The Greatest Story Ever Denied, which was made some 15-20 years ago. And in that, it talks about how the American presidents in the 70s were indicating, the time of the Bush administration, and before that, with Ronald Reagan and all of this, that they were indicating that they need to have a Cold War with the Russians, and the Russians are the enemy, and then the Iraqis are the enemy, the people from the Middle East, so they can experiment and test all the weapons and the technology that they're going to reverse engineer within the last 50-60 years that they have. And then finally the enemy will be aliens, so to actually use the alien technology against so-called aliens to wage the Great War of the Worlds, which is a very interesting concept, but an incredible video. Video number 10, the final video, the UFO that abducts the helicopter. Now, out of all of the footage that's on YouTube, and I've trawled through hours of footage with the UFO that abducts the plane, the abduction caught on camera where a person appears in an office from CCTV footage and vomits, I thought this video is the most compelling. You see the light orb circling and flying around the helicopter, the Chinook helicopter, and just simply absorbs the helicopter and then flies away at a rapid speed. It's an extraordinary piece of video that looks 100% legitimate. It'd be very difficult to fake this type of footage because you can see from all of the atmosphere and the way the object is circling when it absorbs the actual helicopter. It's very similar to the cow abduction video, but this again is another fascinating piece of video footage. If you've liked this video, subscribe to my channel.